super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. Hope you are doing well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional living, traditional food prep and storage, traditional cooking, and of course, raw milk products and traditional artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add the taste of tradition to your life. Is raw milk dangerous? Is a question that many are asking. There is a surge in desire for this luscious and nutritious food, but what about all of the horrible stories of tragedies and loss connected with consuming raw milk and raw milk products? That's our topic of the day. But first, I want to welcome everyone who is a new listener. I hope you enjoyed this content. And as always, a heartfelt welcome back to the veteran homestead-loving regulars who stop by the FarmCast every week. I appreciate you all so much. There is no show without you and your input. There's a lot of exciting news to share with you about what is going on at the farm this week, so let's get to it. All right, we had quite a scare last night. All of a sudden, we had no water. Scott went to the tap, turned it on, and only a dribble came out. Less than 2 hours earlier, I remembered filling my water glass with absolutely no issues. So Scott goes out to check on the water hoses. We have quite a few of them. They're attached at the pump. They bring water to various areas of the homestead. Some go to the animals. One goes to the garden. I think there may be one in the orchard. There's at least another one that's actually attached to the house for use around the house. And these are the usual culprits. One of them will burst or a coupling disintegrates and falls apart, spewing gallons and gallons of water everywhere. And if we don't notice right away, the well can temporarily go dry. But in this case, Scott checked all of the hoses and didn't find any issues. He turned them off anyway. And then the next plan was to replace the breaker for the well pump. It's on its own 220 circuit. However, sometime during the night, the water returned. Don't know what was going on there. We're grateful. It was an interesting experience, and we're grateful to have our water back. Usually when we don't have water, it's because the power is off. Habitually, I would want to turn on the water in this situation, and I had to remind myself that we had none. Because when we have no power, it's easy to remember we also have no water because there's no lights. But all the lights were on. So it was a really strange brain thing. But let me give you an update on the animals. The quail, we have 6 baby quail in the brooder at the moment. They're so cute. There were originally 8, but we lost 2. This particular batch of eggs was not very fertile. We had a lot of eggs in there, and only 8 of them actually even hatched out. As the amount of light diminishes each day due to the changing of the seasons, then the number of eggs laid and their fertility drops dramatically. And I knew it would drop. However, the amount that it dropped was astounding to me. I expected the loss of egg production, not so much the lack of fertility, even though I knew about it. And even though we've read up on a topic and we have the proper information, it's not until we go outside those boundaries ourselves that we realize the truth of the information. So back in the summer, we had 8 or 9 laying hens that were producing about 7 eggs per day. Not bad. That's nearly 1 per day for each hen, and that's typical. A little over a month ago, we added a new batch of young hens to the mix. They were about 8 weeks old and at the age to start laying eggs. So egg production should have increased. Unfortunately, this was also about the time that the light began to fade. At the present time, having increased the laying hen to 15 hens, we're getting one egg every day or so. And that's what I call a dramatic drop in egg production. And it'll continue all winter unless we add some lights for them. And we have a plan there. I'll let you know how it goes. Scott's working on that as I record this. Now, as far as the cows, Cloud, she's still pregnant. Her belly is very big in circumference, but there's really no way of knowing how far along she is unless we get a vet out here. You know, a woman can start to, quote, show in the 4th or 5th month, and it begins to be impossible to miss that she's pregnant at 6 months. And then the 7th through the 9th month is when stretch marks can happen and all that kind of stuff because there's such a rapid growth in the size of the baby. And with cows, the late development of size and weight of the fetus is even more prominent. And while a calf fetus is continually growing in size throughout the pregnancy, it's really slow in the beginning. Over 75% of the calf's total weight gain and growth takes place in the last trimester. And like a woman, that is in months 7 through 9. A cow's gestation cycle averages 283 days, so about 9 months, just like for human women. And I'm guessing that Cloud is in her last month at this point. You know, I could be wrong, but that's my best guess. Somewhere in the next 3 or 4 weeks, maybe sooner. In any case, we are ready in the milking parlor. She's now trained to come in and stand quietly while we wash and clean her udder like we would any other cow who's in milk. And the only thing she's not experiencing at this point is the actual inflations on her teats. That's the milking machine that goes onto her teats, and it pulses to mimic the effect of a calf. And so she's heard the sound of that machine over and over many, many times, so we don't anticipate any kind of big problems when the event does eventually take place. I think it'll go pretty smoothly. Now, the sheep, the goats, the donkeys, they're all doing really well. The goats go into any grazing paddock that they choose. No matter the fencing structure, they are goats. Respecting fences is not part of their nature. And thank goodness at this point, while they move between divided paddocks, they at least stay within the perimeter fencing. I should probably knock on wood with that statement. The sheep are plugging along. Let us know if you're interested in grass-fed and finished lamb. We are just about ready to take a few for processing. Holiday season is upon us, and lamb is a religious tradition for lots of folks. Again, let us know. You can visit the website at peacefulheartfarm.com/store and send us, or you can send us an email, melanie@peacefulheartfarm.com. melanie@peacefulheartfarm.com. Send me an email if you're interested, or peacefulheartfarm.com/store. You can put a deposit down on a lamb, and we will make arrangements for processing and pickup of that. Give us at least 2 weeks to get that done. The donkeys are growing their winter coat. They're putting on some winter fat. They are the friendliest animals on the farm. I hope you get to come and see them sometime. They're just lovely little animals, very short little animals. The creamery. The inner walls are rising out of the dust. It won't be long now. Scott has laid the bottom row of the remaining walls. 2 or 3 more weeks, and they will be complete. Weather complying, of course. It'll be a building with walls and no roof. Is the winter the best time to build a roof? I don't know. I'll have to ask Scott. I'm just so excited to see the walls. The rooms are now defined. In the spring, perhaps we'll be able to milk the cows in the new barn and milking parlor if we get that roof on, you know. And I don't know. He's doing a great job out there. We'll get it when we get it. And that will be such a treat. Milking is such a peaceful time. And the milk produced is so nutritious and delicious. And the cheese, yum, 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 yum. Hey, so let's talk about the topic today. Is raw milk dangerous? This is a question I think everyone who consumes raw milk has asked themselves or others, or maybe they've typed it into a search engine. And we know the reality is that we've been drinking milk straight from the cow for thousands of years. But in September 1987, it became federal law that any milk transported across state lines must be pasteurized. Now, intrastate sales then and now are still regulated by the individual states. I've talked a bit about this in a couple of previous podcasts. Depending on the particular state, there are various legal ways to obtain raw milk for your family. And there has been, and indeed continues to be, quite the scare campaign surrounding the consumption of milk straight from the cow, even though thousands of years we've been doing it. So each person will have to decide for themselves what is best for them. I make no judgments, and everyone knows I love it. Raw milk is wonderful. In fact, I love it so much that it can become a problem for my waistline. But let's get to the studies and the data and see what we can see. So we have the studies and the headlines. In February 2012, the Center for Disease Control published a study targeting raw milk as dangerous and unsafe for human consumption. I think this is just one of the latest in many. The media hype surrounding it is typical. You got fearful headlines, they get clicks, they sell papers, and so all of this was seen. And so all of the hubbub out there on the various social medias is how awful it is, unless you're on the other side of it. I mean, there are other topics where you have this controversy as well, but all kinds of stuff. But this one is about milk. So here are some examples of headlines that you might have seen. In USA Today, there was an article that said, raw milk causes most illnesses from dairy, study finds. The Food Safety News, CDC, raw milk much more likely to cause illness. And then there was a publication called Live Science that did an article, raw milk is a raw deal, CDC says. So they're all quoting this CDC study. And so a couple of those headlines are technically accurate in the study. The raw milk is responsible for more illnesses than pasteurized milk when the number of people who consume each is taken into account. The problem that I have begins with the dramatic overstatements and sensationalism of the findings. Every food we consume comes with risks. But for most, we never even think about it until we see the news article about the recall of spinach, beef, or some other product that we have in our refrigerator. Seafood. Seafood is the biggest contributor of foodborne illnesses, and I'll get to that in a bit. So taking a look at what the research really says about raw milk safety and then compare the risk associated with drinking unpasteurized milk and other foods and activities. So I've got a chart in here that I'll get to in just a few minutes. So if you only saw the headlines from the CDC or any of the FDA reports, you'd be left with the impression that raw milk is dangerous and anyone that consumes it or gives it to their children is reckless and irresponsible. And you see this in the comments and whatnot on your Facebook posts. But in this podcast, I'll present the other side of the argument and give you the bare facts that as I know them. And I can't say that I am without bias, but I will endeavor to convey the information without dramatic hyperbole so that you can make an informed decision about whether unpasteurized milk is a good choice for you and your family. I'm not here to convince you to drink raw milk. Again, that's a decision each individual has to make on their own by weighing the potential risks against the potential benefits. This podcast will cover the risks, and in another, I'll focus on the benefits of drinking raw milk. So gaining some perspective. Let's gain a little bit of perspective. So if we start with putting the current discussion of unpasteurized milk safety into a wider context, foodborne illness is a concern for many types of food, as I mentioned. In 2008, the Center for Science in the Public Interest, CSPI, performed a review of foodborne disease outbreaks in the U.S. Seafood, produce, and poultry were associated with the most outbreaks. Produce is responsible for the greatest number of illnesses each year, 2,062, with nearly twice as many illnesses as poultry, 1,112, dairy products are at the bottom of the list. They cause the fewest outbreaks and illnesses of all the major food categories. That's beef, eggs, poultry, produce, and seafood. So that's the CSPI review. And I'm going to have a download link for that so you can actually get that document and take a look at it, because I'm going to refer to it, a chart that's in there in a little bit. According to the CDC, during the period from 1990 to 2006, this is from the CDC report, there were 24,000 foodborne illnesses reported each year on average. 24,000. Of those, 315 were from dairy products, and this means dairy products account for 1.3% of foodborne illnesses each year. That's not exactly an alarming number, and that's all dairy products, pasteurized and unpasteurized. 1.3% of foodborne illnesses were from dairy. And I guess that also means all dairy, cheese and milk. And you got to consider 75% of the population consumes dairy products regularly. And keep in mind also that outbreaks and illnesses associated with dairy products are generally mild compared to other foods. Now, according to the CSPI report, approximately 5,000 people are killed every year by foodborne illnesses. From 2009 to 2011, 3 high-profile outbreaks involving peanuts, eggs, and cantaloupe alone accounted for 2,729 illnesses and 39 deaths. Yet, there have been only a handful of deaths from pasteurized dairy products in the last decade, and there hasn't been a single death attributed to raw fluid milk since the mid-1980s, in spite of the fact that almost 10 million people are now consuming it regularly. The takeaway is that thousands of people are killed each year by foodborne illness, but they're dying from eating fruits, nuts, eggs, meat, poultry, fish, and shellfish, not from drinking unpasteurized milk. The report and the data in these studies also, in my mind, this is where I get a little bit of an opinion in here, they're always going to be suspect in my mind as far as their accurateness. And illness in these data can mean everything from an upset stomach to mild diarrhea to hospitalization for serious disease. Most foodborne illnesses go unreported, and one of the reasons is that they're only a passing nuisance. Have you ever had a bout of diarrhea that you suspect was caused by something you ate? I have. Did you report it to your doctor or the county public health department? Probably not. I didn't. It was over in less than 24 hours, and I simply vowed not to purchase spinach from Walmart ever again. So it didn't have anything to do with raw milk products. It had to do with raw spinach. And even the cooked spinach my husband ate. His was cooked, mine was raw. I was really sick. But it was fast and quick and over and done with. There is some concern. A statistic where I would be really concerned would be hospitalizations for serious illnesses like kidney failure, hemolytic uremic syndrome, or HUS, caused by unpasteurized milk. They do happen. And when they do, children and the elderly are particularly vulnerable and more likely to suffer. That said, hospitalizations from raw milk are extremely rare. During the 2000 to 2007 period of the referenced study, there were 12 hospitalizations for illnesses associated with raw fluid milk. That's an average of 1.5 per year. If approximately 9.4 million people are drinking raw milk, that would mean you have about a 1 in 6 million chance of being hospitalized from drinking raw milk. And to add to that perspective, your chances of dying in a car wreck are 750 times higher than your chances of becoming hospitalized from drinking raw milk. Again, it doesn't mean there isn't risk. There is. But let's compare raw milk risk to other foods that we consume on a regular basis without even thinking about it. According to the CDC Morbidity and Mortality Weekly, MMWR, from 2006 to 2008, there were an average of 13 outbreaks and 291 illnesses per year associated with shellfish and mollusks. Now, and according to the CDC Food Net survey, about 5.7% of the population, that's 17 million, almost 18 million, consume shellfish. And this means you had 1 in 61,000 chance of becoming ill from eating shellfish. What about other more commonly eaten foods? I'll use a chart from the CSPI report I referenced earlier. The chart will be in the show notes. The document charts the relative incidence of various foodborne illnesses from 1999 to 2006, adjusted for consumption. So the results are: seafood causes 29 times more illness than dairy, poultry 15 times more illness than dairy, eggs 13 times more illness than dairy, beef 11 times more illness than dairy, pork 8 times more illness than dairy, produce caused 4 times more illness than dairy. So what this chart clearly shows is that dairy just might be at the bottom of your list of concerns regarding foodborne illness. You can see the chart. It's like this tiny little bar way down at the bottom is dairy, and all of the others are these big tall bars on the chart. So I hope this helps you better understand the risk of drinking unpasteurized milk within the context of other risks that most of us take on a daily basis without a second thought. Now, today's recipe is not about milk. It's about lamb. Lamb chops with balsamic reduction. This recipe for lamb chops is a favorite on our homestead, and I know, again, that title sounds fancy, but it's an easy and quick recipe for 2 people. We eat 2 chops each. Lamb chops are pretty small. Rosemary, basil, thyme, those are the seasonings that give it great flavor. So what you need 4 lamb chops. We go with the 3/4 inch thick ones. You'll need dried rosemary, basil, and thyme. The recipe will be in the show notes. Salt and pepper, and a tablespoon of cooking oil. And then the reduction sauce is shallots or onions, balsamic vinegar, lamb or chicken broth, and a tablespoon of butter. So here's what you do. In a small bowl or a cup, you mix up the dry rub, the rosemary, the basil, the thyme, the salt, and the pepper. Then you rub it onto both sides of the chops, and just leave that on a plate for like 15 minutes. Heat up your cooking oil on medium-high. Put the chops in the skillet, about 3.5 minutes per side for medium rare, and then take them out of the skillet and keep them warm. See how easy that was? Put a rub on them, 3.5 minutes each side, set them aside. Now you're going to make the reduction sauce. Put the onions or shallots in there, and you're going to cook them until they're brown. And then this is in the fat and the leftover from the chops that you're cooking these in. Then you're going to stir in the balsamic vinegar. Scrape the pan drippings from the bottom of the skillet. That's called deglazing the pan. When you put something acidic in there, it takes all of those pan drippings right off of the bottom of the pan and puts the flavoring into the sauce. All right, so you've got the vinegar in there. Get your scrapings off the bottom, put in the broth, and then just cook and stir that for about 5 minutes. All right, so you brown the onions, you put the vinegar in, put the broth in, brown that, not brown it. You're just stirring it over a medium heat for about 5 minutes until the sauce reduces by half. And then you take it off of the heat, stir in that butter, and it will thicken up into a lovely sauce. Pour that sauce over your chops and serve. Couple of notes. You can try substituting red wine or red wine vinegar for the balsamic vinegar. I've done that. Now, and if you double that recipe, like you're feeding a lot more people, it more than doubles the amount of time to reduce the sauce. You might be looking at, instead of 5 minutes, you might be looking at 15 minutes or even 20 minutes to get that sauce to reduce, because you've got twice as much liquid on in there. And you could reduce that liquid by some. You could figure out how to alter that recipe a little bit, so you would get not 2 cups of broth, but maybe 1.5 cups of broth or something like that. So you're reducing the amount of liquid that you have there. All right, final thoughts. We have lambs coming up, available soon. Get on the waiting list. That's a shameless plug there. We love our animals, and they receive the best life possible, and they produce the best and most nutritious food for you and your family. Stay tuned for updates on Cloud and her impending delivery and the progress of the creamery. Now, is raw milk dangerous? Remember, it's your choice whether you consume raw milk and or raw milk products. It's hard with all the negative press out there on just about every food available, and raw milk more so than others. I hope I've provided a balance to some of the sensationalized information regularly regurgitated. Consuming any food is a risk, but how much? How much risk do we already tolerate on a daily basis that is not related to raw milk dairy? If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to Apple Podcast, subscribe, and give me a 5-star rating and review. And the best way to help out this show is to share it with any friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. As always, I'm here to help you taste the traditional touch. Thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.